close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. On this week's show we're going to hear from Ireland hockey star David Harte, who's currently based in Utrecht in the Netherlands. We're also going to chat to Carbery Games Development Officer and Castlehaven Senior Football Manager James McCarthy about what they've been doing to ensure the young people of West Cork are still getting their daily dose of GAA. But Kieran, first, let's just chat quickly about the Olympic Games. It's looking more and more likely that they won't be going ahead this year. I think it's more or less been officially announced that they're going to be postponed until 2021. Earlier this afternoon, the Japanese Prime Minister had asked the IOC to postpone the games, and this is obviously going to be a tough one for athletes the world over, especially for us, the West Cork contingent. But there really doesn't look to be another option at the minute, does there?
No, and it is official now, Jack, that they have postponed the Olympics until the 2021, and it is the right call. It 100% is the right call. The Olympics were meant to kick into life on July 24th, and you just can't see that happening because obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's brought the world to a standstill. And while a certain amount of athletes have qualified already for the Olympics, I think nearly half of those allocated spaces haven't been filled yet. So a lot of athletes haven't qualified for the Olympics, and there is no qualifying tournaments and competitions for them now to qualify. So health reasons, it makes sense to qualify. It makes sense to postpone. It makes sense to postpone it. It is the right decision, and it's important too for the athletes, Jack. Now, for it gives them a bit of clarity, because for the last couple of weeks, as they've seen other events postponed, from Formula 1 to Premier League to GAA to you name it, it's been postponed. The Tokyo Olympics, they're always saying it's still going ahead. It's still going ahead. But I think we all knew it's not going to go ahead. How could it go ahead considering what's going on? So they've made the right call. They've called it now a couple of months out from it, and it allowed the athletes to kind of refocus, reset. So yeah, it is the right decision, Jack.
And I'm going to ask you a question now which you won't have the answer to, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, because obviously in 2021 the World Athletics Championships and the World Swimming Championships are both booked to take place. So I know this is an impossible question to answer. I've been asking you a lot of impossible questions the last few weeks, but from I'm thinking of Phil Healy specifically, because she would be targeting the World Athletic Championships in a big way in 2021. So how can you see them having two huge sporting events within such a short time frame?
I think they will. If you look at, let's say, the rowing for a second, that there will be a World Rowing Championships next year just after the Olympics, and usually when that happens, it's a World Rowing Championships for non-Olympic class boats. Go back to 2016, that's when we saw Paul O'Donovan. He headed to Holland after winning silver with Gary, and Paul went to Holland and he won gold in the lightweight men's single scull, which isn't an Olympic class boat. So it can be done. Like even after this year's Olympics, I think the European Athletics Championships were scheduled to take place a couple of weeks after. So I think they'll just have to, I suppose, amend the calendars some bit to fit everything in. I think we'll all just be glad to have sport back in the agenda, Jack, because we're just what is it, second or third week now without sport, and it's just, there's something missing from our lives when we don't have sport. But back to the athletes for a second, and the West Cork athletes that this is affecting. You mentioned Phil Healy there. She was 99.9% qualified for her first Olympics this summer. Also, we've mentioned a lot about the rowers. We will have two skipperine rowers going to the Olympics. Gary and Paul O'Donovan and Jacob Finton McCarthy are battling for the two seats there. And we also had Kildamartyr boxer Christina Desmond, who's still in with a chance of qualifying for the Olympics. So for those athletes now, they've got a bit of clarity. They know the games aren't going ahead. I presume training programs and so on are going to be kind of amended and changed now to facilitate the next couple of months, because they have no competitions. How it's going to all pan out, I don't know, Jack, in terms of the qualifying spots for next year, kind of do the points or let's say Phil Healy for a second, she's accrued a certain amount of points at the moment in the world rankings. Will those points continue into next year, or what happens? Do they start again whenever it gets back to normal? We don't know, but that'll be all ironed out in the next couple of months, I presume.
I think an important thing to note as well is the fact that it is a postponement as opposed to a cancellation, because I was actually listening to another podcast, the Second Captain's podcast, earlier this week, and they had New York Times journalist Tariq Panja on, and he had a startling statistic really, that basically the Olympic Games, each time they come around, there are around 13,000 athletes compete at the Games. Only around of those athletes, about 6,000 of them only get to compete at one Olympic Games. So if there was a cancellation, you're looking at a lot of the Irish athletes and the West Cork athletes. This may be their one and only chance. So it's great that it is a postponement, because one year isn't a huge amount in the grand scheme of things. People will still be able to, as you say, tailor their training programs and target 2021 with the same zest they targeted this year's Olympics.
And you've actually made a great point there, Jack, because if we take the rowers for a second, the next Olympic Games, the Tokyo Olympics, it's been widely touted that it's the last time that we will have lightweight rowing as part of the Olympic schedule. So for the likes of Gary and Paul O'Donovan and Jake and Finton, this could be their last chance to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So it's really, really important that they haven't cancelled the Games. They made the right decision postponing the Games. And it just goes to show that in the history of the Olympics, they've never, ever been postponed like this before, as in going back to the kind of following year. So it just highlights again, it's unprecedented times, but they've made the right decision. I'm delighted now that the athletes and coaches and everyone knows what the story is going forward.
Okay, well, Kieran, one West Cork athlete who did get to compete at an Olympic Games was Kinsale hockey player David Harte, who lined out at the Rio Olympics in 2016. And just full disclosure for our listeners, this chat you had with David was recorded before the announcement that the Games had been postponed. So just bear that in mind when we play the chat with David. But he's living in Utrecht. He's obviously a professional hockey player over there, and you spoke to him also about obviously the COVID-19 crisis and how it's affecting his life in the Netherlands.
It's okay. It's not like there's an actual set lockdown or anything in place just yet, but at the minute it is still feeling like you are putting yourself in isolation, not being out and about as socially active as you would have been in the past, of course. There has been a bit of issue with the adhering to such measures, as we would say. You know, there's pictures, again, social media has wonders of putting only the worst case scenarios at times into the public eye, and it was like of Amsterdam forests and woods and parks and everything, not too dissimilar to what's happening in Ireland, I suppose. Yeah. Whether it's Banna Beach or it's out, you know, in Kinsale or in Garrettstown and like, you know, people are out and about and ultimately not really kind of listening to the advice that's being given to them, but it's okay. There's an address to the public, I think, tonight now at 7 o'clock, which is just on now. The Dutch Prime Minister, again, will be just giving his update and seeing what's going on. And from what I heard and rumours of it, just from some of my Dutch friends here, saying that depending on obviously the amount of numbers and say fatalities, if they're matching up, but if they're managing to control it and not let obviously get too much and overpowering the intensive care units and the hospitals, then they might need to take more stricter measures, unfortunately.
How is a country like the Netherlands kind of set up to kind of cope with the demands of what could be coming down the line?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think, to be fair, from my understanding and experience, the healthcare system here in the Netherlands here is top quality, is really world class. But again, it's probably just all about quantity, really, isn't it? You know, like just how many beds are available, how many intensive care beds in particular are available, do they have enough of the equipment required, oxygen tanks, you name it, all those kind of things that are coming to the fore now in the UK and other countries who are looking to get extra brought in because they weren't really ready for the increase into people suffering from the coronavirus COVID-19. So I think right now it's hard to say straight off the bat going, yeah, they're really prepared or not prepared. But I think for now, from what I'm reading and seeing over here, they're in an okay place.
I suppose like COVID-19 and what we're going to talk about now is, I suppose, the impact on the sporting world, and looking at the Olympics in a second. But in the grand scheme of things, it just puts everything in perspective, what's happening around the world right now. When you see what's happening in Italy, Spain, across the world, it does put a lot of things in perspective, especially sport as well, David.
Yeah, it kind of goes to show, really, doesn't it, that, there's no real facet in society that isn't affected by it. And of course, for ourselves who are hugely involved in sport, and it's our lives, it's difficult to try and draw that perspective away from the fact, that on a higher level, and ultimately, people's health is far more important than any sporting event or sporting show to go on, or training, or this and that. And you just really have to figure it out, that just when you start seeing figures, facts, numbers, still, like, my heart goes out to Italy at the minute and seeing the death toll rise constantly and each day, and you're just going to yourself, I don't really care anymore that I can't go train. At the beginning, like last week, I was finding it really difficult, but right now there's a lot more important things in this world than sport.
Looking at the Olympics, so the Olympic Games in Tokyo are meant to kick off 24th of July. It's looking less and less likely that's going to happen. What are the options available to the IOC? I suppose there's cancellation and postponement. Are they the two main options, David?
They would be the main options, but I don't think the IOC have even explored or considered a cancellation, to be completely honest. Some of the latest information coming out from the IOC, and again through the powers of social media, is stating that they're most likely, the IOC has considered and will be almost accepting the fact that there will be a postponement of the Olympic Games, and now they're just trying to find the time frame of when they're going to host it. But again, reading what I did just literally 10 minutes ago from a credible source, looks like they're looking as an option for 2021.
And I suppose from the athlete's point of view, like, and you were an Olympian back in 2016, like, if the Olympic Games were to go ahead this year, which they won't, we think they won't, but for athletes to train and even to qualify and so on, there's so many variables up in the air at the moment. From an athlete's physical point of view and preparation, from their mental preparation, this uncertainty cannot help.
There's uncertainty, as you mentioned, the doubts, the not being able to train to your potential or to fulfill your potential if you were to go and try and compete in Olympic Games, which is literally less than 18 weeks away, 24th of July. That's basically not going to go hand in hand with what the Olympics is all about, the motto of higher, stronger, faster, and all that. That would certainly not be the case. And I think athletes are, of course, trying to get their head around that. They're trying to, negotiate the way through their training routines if they can, especially individual athletes who are more comfortable and more used to perhaps training alone or kind of more in secluded areas. And again, me coming from a team sport, I find it completely different than the way that you're separated from teammates, that you can't train a team dynamic, you can't train set routines, you can't do anything team-based. And that's one of the hardest things as well. If you look at the Irish women who've qualified with the hockey as well, for them, they're also having to train individually rather than centrally, which is really difficult at a time like this. And I think it obviously goes across and spreads throughout the world right now, that a lot of countries are in more kind of a severe situation than others. Like, for example, Spain, Italy right now, there's a complete lockdown where professional and Olympic athletes, there really isn't any give in what you are allowed or not allowed to do. But there are countries then, perhaps, say, I've even heard today that the Indian men's hockey team are still training behind closed doors. So again, it all depends basically what one country is doing compared to the other. And again, if you're looking for equality and fair play and an even playing field for all, that's unfortunately not in the equation right now, the way the world is going.
If you look at the Irish rowers for a second, then the Irish men's double that will go to the Olympics. We know there will be two skipperine men in that boat whenever they decide that combination. But with the 3 rowing World Cups cancelled, they literally have no regattas before the Olympics. So, like, you want, I suppose, the athletes to go to the Olympics kind of primed and ready to perform, because it's the greatest sporting event in the world every 4 years, and everybody looks forward to it. So you want the athletes to be at the peak of their powers for it, and that won't happen this year.
No, and that's really disappointing. But again, I think with the announcement that will probably be inevitable at this stage and over the coming days come out, perhaps that the IOC will say a postponement has been decided upon and agreed upon, then that would be the best case scenario right now for all those athletes who are in a bit of uncertainty. They don't have the match practice, they don't have the competition, they don't have the events like you're talking about. But really also, I find it so difficult for those who haven't qualified yet, those qualification events that have been cancelled, that have been put off. Some of them obviously postponed, but some are actually outright cancelled. And then the IOC has the issue of how handle all of those? Is it current world ranking? Is it based on points gained already, in particular in individual sports? And that's really difficult. Like mentioned in the figures of, I think there's 57% of athletes have already qualified, and I know those 57%, their Olympic ticket can't be taken away from them. That's them qualified, and brilliant. That's how it should be. But it's the remaining 43. You'd have to say you do have a huge degree of empathy towards them and what they're going through right now.
It really is unprecedented, David, because the Olympic Games have never been pushed back into the following year ever before. They're always meant to be held in that calendar year. So it just shows the severity of the pandemic that is gripping the world. But it is, like we said there, it's the right choice, I think, for everybody involved. Just push the Olympics back into 2021. Let the world heal and recover, and give these athletes a chance then to do what they do best next summer.
And it's literally because nobody knows yet. This pandemic is evolving hour by hour, day by day. And for athletes looking to try and go onto an Olympic Games, a day right now is feeling like a week. You know, if they're in isolation and they can't train and they're not into their regular, normal routines, you can understand then the frustration coming from athletes with the unknown that is out there. And hopefully there will be a lot more clarity in the coming weeks to put their mind at ease.
David, thank you so much for joining us, and take care of yourself mind yourself, and
thanks, Kieran.
We'll be chatting to you again soon.
Brilliant, and the same to yourselves as well in Cork. Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to all things sport in West Cork. Don't forget to pick up this Thursday's Southern Star newspaper, including our award-winning sports section with everything a West Cork sports fan could want. In shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world via www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper. The Southern Star and the Star Sport Podcast, #1 for sport in West Cork.
One of the biggest problems brought upon by the COVID-19 crisis is the inability of young people to get their regular exercise in, with no football, rugby, soccer or any training for that matter allowed under social distancing guidelines. People are having to get creative. Kieran, we know about the game you created in your own home. We spoke about it last week, basketball. I'm still curious as to how the NBA will feel when you start going around claiming you've created a game called basketball. But what have GAA clubs in West Cork been doing?
Just to emphasise, you emphasise the basket, and there's a hyphen between basket and ball. So there is a stark difference there, Jack, which we'll come back to at a later point. But I suppose, like we mentioned earlier, unprecedented times for all sports, and the GAA season has been suspended too. So in fairness to a lot of clubs locally, that they're running different online initiatives, kind of video training programs and the like. And the Carbery GAA coaches, the Carbery GDA, James McCarthy and Paddy Crowley, they've created this kind of online service to help all the clubs locally to kind of keep in contact with each other, swap coaching tips and so on. They've created a Twitter handle which is Carbery GAA Coaching and Games, where every day they're posting videos of different skills, both hurling and football, that young kids across West Cork can practice just to keep their fitness level and skill levels up, because we don't know when anyone's going to get back on the GAA field training and playing again. So it's important too that kids kind of practice their skills, and they keep active as well, because they're indoors a lot now, and health and fitness and the mental well-being are so important. So Carbery GAA, it's a great initiative by them. There's WhatsApp groups going around. They've set up, like I mentioned, the online video training sessions. They're swapping tips and advice and stuff, and it's all just bringing Carbery GAA together and keeping everyone fit and active. So I caught up with James McCarthy earlier, and he talked me through what exactly is going on.
We're joined now on the Star Sport podcast by the Carbery GDA, James McCarthy, also the Castlehaven senior football manager. Unprecedented times at the moment. And the Carbery GAA, you've been a bit innovative and inventive with your latest initiative. Can you fill us a small bit in about what's going on at the moment, what yourself and Paddy Crowley have been up to?
I suppose, different times altogether since I spoke to you last. I suppose what we're trying to do, is try to communicate with the coaches through the internet and through the WhatsApp groups and websites and everything, with give you ideas on what the kids could be doing at home. I know the clubs are putting up loads of stuff, but we're trying to, for the clubs that ain't doing that thing or the coaches that ain't getting it, we're giving them ideas with Cork players there doing drills or skills. So it's just a small bit of communication we're trying to do. Networking with the clubs from home really is what we can only do at the moment.
Because as we all know, like there's a blanket ban in all GA activities at the moment, and we don't know when the kids and football players and hurlers will be back on the training fields of West Cork and beyond when this COVID-19 pandemic comes to an end, whenever that will be. So this is very important what you're doing, James. You're keeping kids and even players active by, I suppose, like you said, you're throwing out different ideas. Even right now on Twitter, I'm watching the Carbery GA Coaching and Games, the new Twitter handle that's been set up, and Paddy Crowley's been putting up videos every day of different drills and so on. So it's ideas like that just to keep the kids kind of supposed training away and tipping away, because they're not able to train at the moment. They can't get down to their local GA field and train with their friends. So you're trying to keep them active as well.
Yeah, and we're encouraging the coaches to keep in contact with their players of all ages, and to keep them interested. And as well as that, you're keeping parents happy as well, because you're getting the kids to go outside, especially a day like today now with a bit of sunshine. But they need, like anything, players are used to being told what to do. Now they have to be self-disciplined now, and they're looking for stuff to do. So look, they have plenty of time in their hands. It's a time to get more skillful, more fitter, but especially with the younger lads in here, especially, it's the skills of the game in both hurling and football.
How does this work, so James?
Very simply, I suppose, we get a basic clip from, say, a Damien Gore or Michael Hurley or Brian Hurley or someone like that. We do a basic skill. We send it on to every contact we have in Carbery. Basically, every coach from under 10 to under 14 will get a text from us. The clubs will get an email from us. All the WhatsApp groups we have will get a video of a clip of the skill, and the Carbery board will put it up on their website and their Twitter site. So there should be no issue for any coach out there not getting a bit of information.
So like you're supplying yourself and Paddy and the Carbery GA coaches, you're supplying this information to the clubs, and the clubs can pass that on to their players and club members. Yes, yeah, and it's kind of a pyramid kind of a thing coming down from the top. But again, as not leaving out the clubs here, there's loads of clubs doing great stuff, and again, it's a load of stuff copying each other there, and that's brilliant. But a lot of coaches mightn't see that, so we're sending it directly to their phone, so they don't have to go into any website or any Twitter account. We're actually sending it to them straight, direct, because we got all their account details, phone numbers from the clubs. Oh, that's brilliant. And like you mentioned earlier, it's going to keep the kids happy and the parents happy. But especially on the kids for a second, James, there's so many kids now right across West Cork and even well beyond that they're not in school at the moment and so on. And just to keep these kids active, because they're not able to hang out with their friends, they're not able to do what they've been doing all their lives. So even this little bit of exercise every day, kind of practicing these skills, these fundamental and basic skills, it's very important just to keep these kids active, isn't it?
100%, and for the mental state of all of us, I suppose, in the community as well, and for the kids themselves, that they get out and get the fresh air that they're so used to before. So, about, a lot of times we give you out about sport, about referees and organisations and pitches and everything, but when we don't have it, it's a massive loss to the community. So, look, it is what it is. We have to make the best of it, and we're trying to help each other out here, and we're doing it from at home.
And the GA clubs they're so important in every community in West Cork. even like we don't have games now, there's no training sessions, but clubs are still helping out the local communities. They're helping out the elderly in their communities. It's like this is bringing out the best in people too, and the best in GA clubs, James.
Yes, and of course the GA again, and praising the GA here big time. The GA have contacts and clubs in every parish in Ireland. So when there is something as bad as what's happening in the world at the moment in the country, the GA will come to the forefront, and you see it there already with Crow Park and Páirc Uí Chaoimh and Nolan Park and all these places opening up. But the basic stuff on the ground of people just going to the neighbour and do they want a message from town? Do they want a prescription picked up? The clubs are, you can see it, I hear it and see it. They're coming to the forefront there because the GA people are the leaders in their parish, and that's not taken from any other organisation. There's loads of them. But myself and Paulie, they are just from our own connections there. We rang every club in West Cork, seeing what they're doing to help their community, and we're putting groups together there just to pass on information, sharing ideas, what's the do's and don'ts. You just can't rock up outside the person's door and start knocking at the door and say, do you want something? That's not the done thing now. So it's to get the message out there from the clubs. Loads of people willing to help out, but it's to get the message out there is the thing. So what we've been told is any GA club out there that's interested in helping their community to get onto all the different links in the parish, the Red Cross, the Lions community, the nursing community, the daycare centres, all these places who are helping the elderly and the people in need to get their message out there that they are willing to help out in any way they can.
And just to explain again, James, if there's any kind of coach listening to this podcast now and he wants to get access to these clips and these tips, what's the best way to get his hands on this information?
Well, if he's in a club, he can get on to his coaching officer if he's not getting a clip at the moment. And if he wants to get onto Twitter, it's Carbery Coaching Twitter site, Carbery GA Coaching. And we're going to starting YouTube channel on the Carbery Coaching main website as well. So the Carbery board are very proactive and backing us in all this. Fair play to them.
Oh, fantastic work. Big congrats to yourself and Paddy Crowley in this. Like it's great to see this. Like we were saying earlier, that people are coming together in these times, and it brings out the best of people. So great stuff, James. Fantastic.
Okay, and just before you go there, Kieran, we have a player with the older players there. It's vital that the coaches keep in contact with their players, because there's a mental side to this as well, and to keep pushing them to go kicking the ball off the gable end of all ages, because we're all used to being out, and with an old text to say go out there and do your bit and keep fit is vital in these times.
Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to all things sport in West Cork. Don't forget to pick up this Thursday's Southern Star newspaper, including our award-winning sports section with everything a West Cork sports fan could want. In shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world via www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper. The Southern Star and the Star Sport Podcast, number 1 for sport in West Cork.
Welcome back to the Star Sport Podcast, and not to labour the point, but obviously there is no live sport taking place in West Cork or almost anywhere in the world at the minute, but that doesn't mean people don't want to read about sport, and thankfully that's where we come in, and the Star Sports section will be there in all its glory in this week's Southern Star, which is still available across West Cork and beyond in all shops that sell newspapers. So Kieran, what can readers expect even in this week's Southern Star Sports section?
There's a lot going on in the sports section as usual, Jack. And my favourite piece, and I usually don't do this, but I've one particular favourite piece in this week's sports section, and it's Orla Cronin's healthy banana bread recipe. Orla Cronin from Inniskeen, she's the 4-time All-Ireland winner with Cork Camogie, kind of the best centre forward in the game of Camogie right now. I touched base with her earlier in the week to ask for any recommendations for Netflix for a piece I'm going to run over the next couple of weeks, and Orla got back to me, and she's not a big TV person, but at the moment she told me she's mad into baking and cooking to pass the time, and she said I can send you on a recipe, and I said please do. And next thing she sent on this recipe for healthy banana bread with a picture, and my God, you could almost smell it through the computer screen how nice this healthy banana bread looks and tastes, I would say. So this week's Southern Star, for the first time, we have a cooking recipe, but it's Orla Cronin's healthy banana bread recipe, and I'd recommend everyone in West Cork they pick up the Star this Thursday for this recipe alone, because we all have time in our hands, and I want people to send in their pictures of their healthy banana bread after this, Jack, and see how they compare to Orla's, because like I said to her, she could have a cookbook in the offing by Christmas. So that's one highlight in this week's Southern Star.
And have you made an attempt at cooking this delicious banana bread yet? And if not, why not? And if Orla is listening, is she going to send any banana bread to Southern Star HQ? I know we're not there, but we could pick it up maybe.
Well, at the moment my hands are full until deadline day is over, but I'm going to get the ingredients, Jack, and I'm going to give it a go. I suppose my cooking and baking, I can do Rice Krispie buns. After that it gets a little bit more complicated, so we'll see how I get on. But she's every step kind of marked out, and it's almost foolproof for someone like me, so even I couldn't get this wrong. So it's well worth checking out Thursday Star for that. We have loads more beside it. I caught up with Owen Barry. He's the young skipperine rower who kind of featured on the recent RTE programme Big Little Fix. Owen from Nasheen, his house is a stone's throw from Gary and Paul's house in Nasheen. Owen was born with kind of upper limb deficiency, so his right hand stops a couple of inches just below his elbow, but that still hasn't held him back in terms of rowing. He wants to row for Ireland, he wants to row internationally. 2 years ago we carried a story when he rowed his first ever competitive race, and now thanks to this RT series that they've a prosthetic arm and an attachment that help him to row better than ever before. He's now able to feather the rower, which is turn it at a 90-degree angle after the stroke. So it's a lovely interview with Owen, and we're just delighted to see him still progressing. Other couple of highlights: Noel Horgan has selected his top 10 Cork footballers of all time that he's seen play. And Noel Horgan, as all Southern Star readers will know, he's our kind of GA correspondent for longer than I've been alive. He watched his first Cork Championship win back in 1966, so this man has seen more Cork footballers than most. So it's a really, really interesting top 10, so worth checking out for that.
Can you give us Can you give us any clues as to one or two that have made the list? Maybe don't give us anything too close to the top, but maybe a modern footballer who's squeezed into Noel's top 10.
There is a couple. There isn't too many modern footballers, but when I say this man from Bantry who captained Cork to the 2010 All-Ireland football final success makes the list, that's probably given away one of them, but Graham Canty is there, but I think Graham Canty should be in any list. He's a legend of Cork GA, so that's one. Check out Thursday Star for the rest of them. Joe McCarthy's a very good interview with Premier League para-athlete Donncha McCarthy, so that's well worth checking out too. Donncha has his target of the Paralympics, which have also been moved to 2021, so a good interview there by Joe McCarthy. Lots going on besides that. I actually caught up with Sean O'Leary. He's a teacher at Beara Community School, and they recently won a Munster Under-19D football title, and big breakthrough for Beara GA. It's a good news Beara football story. So Sean was talking me through, I suppose, how the division has come together and how everyone has bought in, from the school to the clubs to the board, to kind of create an environment where for the school team can now flourish. He was telling me before they might struggle to get 15 players to fill a team, but now their problem is selecting 15 to start, because at a recent training session they combined the seniors and the under 16 and a half, and they had 43 kids there in the school training, which is fantastic. Also, my column this week, Jack, it's my foolproof guide on how to survive in a world without live sport. I know I've given you a kind of a peek preview of this, so you're in a better place to judge this than I am, but I think it'll strike a chord with a lot of people out there, kind of how they can survive this world without live sport. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I have to say I enjoyed it immensely. I read it this morning, and I have to say I don't laugh at a lot of things you say, but I laughed at this throughout. So very enjoyable, and I look forward to seeing it on the page, because I'm sure you have something planned to make it jump off. And anyone who is struggling like myself and Kieran to get through the days without Champions League to look forward to in the evening, or football or hurling match to go to at the weekend, it's something a bit light-hearted that put a smile on your face and make you think of better times.
Exactly. A couple of more bits before I finish, Jack. I have an interview with a former skipper in rower, Ross O'Donovan, who's now a coach with Lee Valley, and he coaches the Lee Valley Junior 12s. Obviously they can't get in the water now, but he's teaching his crew through kind of online, kind of Zoom and Google Duo and WhatsApp and stuff. So it's very interesting that even though the teams can't get in the pitch and crews can't get in the water, that these coaches out there are still delivering training sessions to their young kids, and it's fantastic to see. So that's a great story in this week's Star again. And James McCarthy has put his neck in the line a small bit, and he's also he's listed his top 10 current West Cork League players. What I initially was looking for was for Ger to pick his top 10 West Cork League players of all time. He didn't deliver that. I think he was worried about the abuse, for want of a better word, that he could face. But he's given me his top 10 current West Cork League players. So from players from Doris to Clonakilty to...
Just before you go any further, I'm curious...
No, Jack, you're not in it.
What? I didn't make the list.
It's an outrage, and it's almost my lead story this week. Jack McCarron did not make Joe McCarthy's top 10 West Cork League players. I don't know why. I think... Did
any Baltimore players make the cut?
I'd be giving away too much if I revealed if anyone did or didn't. You'd have to pick up Thursday Southern Star like the rest of our...
Well, I will pick it up. There's no need to worry about that. But just... I look forward to seeing that now. I'm curious. Hopefully he at least has included some players from the Championship, because from my experience there are some quality players in that league. They're not all Premier League, are they?
No, there's a couple of Championship players in there too. Kind of. I know we've spoken before about your 45-yard goal a couple of months back. Kind of still lives long in the memory, because you spoke about it enough at work for a couple of weeks after. But you don't make the cut this time, Jack. But don't give up. Like, I might get George to do this every season, so you've something to aim for now.
Well, interestingly, just on that note, because the reason I'd be surprised if he hasn't included a Baltimore player, because as it stands, we are in the playoff positions, and so we should really be. If it was my decision, we would just be given automatic promotion, because it's not looking like the league season is going to be finished anytime soon. So he'd want to have included at least one Baltimore player, considering we are now a Premier League side based on current situation. So there's one shining light to come from the COVID-19 sports blackout.
So like I said, plenty in this week's paper, Jack. Before I finish up, what's that ornament behind you on the table? It's caught my eye from... What is that? Is it a doll or...
I'll tell you now exactly. I don't know if listeners will be able to see it. I don't want to... So if you can... Our listeners, viewers, you can see there. It is a statue who goes by the name of Jimmy. It's a kind of a garden ornament type thing. And my grandfather used to live with us when we were growing up. And it was his statue that he used to keep outside his front door. And when he died, my mother gave it to me, so now I always keep it in the house when I live it. It's a kind of a pretty lame, but there you go. You were hoping it was going to be something to embarrass me, but it's just a kind of a heartwarming tale. Jimmy, he watches over me at all time, even when I'm talking to you.
That's kind of backfired on me a small bit, Jack. There's nothing I can say after that. So, no, but like we're saying, like this Thursday Southern Star, it's in shops across West Cork as normal, and it's online, Jack, isn't it?
It is. It's available to purchase online. Just go to www.thesouthernstarTV/e-paper, and you can purchase one edition for €2. You can purchase a monthly subscription for €9. You can purchase a 6 monthly subscription for €45, or you can purchase an annual subscription for €87. That works out at less than €2 per week when you subscribe for the full year. And we also have postal subscriptions available as well. So if you can't make it to the shops and you're not as comfortable reading your newspaper on your phone, tablet or computer, for example, I personally like to have the physical copy. But if you can't make it to the shop, we can deliver to your door just get in contact with the Southern Star office. The number is 028 212 00, and we'll organise for the Southern Star to be delivered to your front door every Thursday for as long as the current situation remains.
And I would urge people to kind of buy a newspaper, because you do want some kind of sense of normality and everything going on. And the Southern Star has been here for 131 years. We're out every Thursday, and we'll continue to deliver all the news and sport and goings on in West Cork. And especially, I know I've vested interest because it's a sports section, but I do think just allows people just to escape the reality for a couple of hours, and it's good entertainment, and it takes your mind off what's going on. So like I said, I know for me telling people to buy the Southern Star is a bit obvious, but I do just kind of supporting local businesses and all that kind of. We put great effort into it. It's a great product every week, and we're working remotely too at the moment, which is a credit to the whole team at the Southern Star, that we're putting together this fantastic paper, and we're all spread over different corners of West Cork. So great team effort by the Star, and it will be in the shops on Thursday morning, so go out and get your copy either in the shop or online, like Jack said.
And just one final thing to add on that, I don't want to labour the point too much, because as Kieran said, we're clearly shilling for the paper, but there is also an element of a trust that's built up with the Southern Star over the 131 years as Kieran managed. I'm sure anyone who's listening now will have been receiving some fairly out of kilter, oddball messages from various WhatsApp groups reporting to be news from governments or doctors, and most of it is absolute tripe. But one thing you can know for certain, when you get to Southern Star, all the news and sport will be researched like with a fine-tooth comb, and everything can be trusted. But Kieran, I suppose we'll leave it there for this week. So thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to the show.